Hey, everybody, we're going to be back right now with you guys talking about fixing errors before publication. Now, I'm probably better to moderate this considering how many errors I put in with my spelling and my grammar. And with us, we have Varian, who actually runs Last Call Comics. And what would you say your current title is?
Oh man,
Where are you at? What's your title, Catherine?
my title.
Yeah, yeah.
I am a writer for Like Father Like Daughter, and they call her Dancer. So, and editor and everything on it. Publisher for both as well. So,
And aren't you also still doing a video program, or do you still have a video channel going
oh
on?
yeah, yeah, I do so much. Yeah, so
Yeah.
for comic stuff, that's what I do, and I am also part of Comic Uno, which I created, which is my handle right there, and I do comic book reviews every week. So I just posted my Wednesday reviews yesterday. I also work for DC Universe, DC Comics streaming service, where I do articles over there, and then also Newsarama. So keeping myself busy.
Seems like. And Variant, give them your pedigree as it is.
The only thing I seem to do well is comics.
And
That's pretty much it.
you're a reluctant taxpayer.
Reluctant taxpayer. Oh, you want the whole spiel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Variant grandchild. 8 year. Oh, not 8 year. Oh my gosh, that's a long time. But maybe 12 year veteran of this comic book industry. And I am a father, a husband, a geek, a creator, a writer, a reluctant taxpayer, sensitivity reader now, um, social distancer, all that good stuff. Yeah, I've been
And
running
we're all at
Rascal.
home.
Yeah, all of that right at home. Um, I've been doing comics since 2008. Uh, so it's one of the few industries that I wanted to get into that I'm actually pretty good at. So, these guys are stuck with me.
Now, both of you have been part of reviews and all that, so I'm going to open it up to you guys. What are the biggest mistakes you're seeing get past an editor and go to being published? Like, you guys pick up the book, you notice this, and you go, how did this get printed? So, open court, who wants to go first?
I
I think,
guess.
yeah, I think Cactus should go
Yeah,
first.
sure. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I'll go. As a critic, what I've seen is definitely just like coloring mistakes. I definitely think that's like the biggest thing I've ever seen is like when people should be a different ethnicity and they're not because of a coloring mistake. I would say the big two sometimes does that. And then obviously you get grammar and spelling sometimes, and sometimes it passes the copy editor, and that sucks. But luckily, those are things that could be fixed in, a second printing or a trade. So that's nice. But those are kind of the biggest stuff I've seen.
Uh, yeah, I'd have to echo that. That's pretty much. I've seen that, and I've seen a lot of misspellings. A lot of words that sound like other words. So like you know, take that in the house. Someone makes a mistake and they put an N on the back of that, so it's taking that in the house, and you're like, oh, that took me right out the story. How did that get past the copy editor? How did that get past? Somebody should have, even the letterer should have stopped that or fixed that. But yeah, that's like the most common error I see is spelling errors getting through. I've seen a couple of like Kat mentioned, a couple of coloring issues. Someone's shirt is a different color in one scene than it is in the next. For some reason, that tree is blue. But other than that, like you guys didn't. You have to ask people sometimes, like, do you have a good relationship with your colorist? Does he hate you? Because there's a blue tree in the background. But other than that, that's what I really see. And I think I've seen some ad errors too. A funny one I seen was some guys ran an ad once and they spelled their website incorrect. So
Oof,
that was pretty
that's a
funny.
big one.
Yeah, yeah. Their company failed quickly after that. So yeah.
Yeah, if you're not spreading the love of your website, I have a feeling that most people wouldn't be going to it.
No.
So now, yesterday we brought up, and I want to touch on it today, and we'll go in the same order. One of the biggest mistakes I notice is story pacing. It's why we did an entire panel to it. But I want to bring it up today because, again, it just fits here. And I want to spend some time because, to me, that's the worst part of a story. And Varian, we've talked about it, how people rush comics out to you. As a publisher, you've seen them rush it. I'm sure you've ran into the story, just problems with the flow of it, the way that it looks even. So we're going to talk about that at the beginning of the show because I really want to continue. And I want both of your opinions because even Varian, you weren't really here at that point when we were talking about it at the very beginning of the video yesterday.
Yeah.
You kind of came in later, so I'd love to hear you guys. So here we go.
Yeah, so pacing. Oh man, I think that comes with time. Just talk about story pacing. It comes with experience to understand how a story should be paced, and also read comics. Read other comics, see what works with them, and when you feel like, oh, this is taking too long to tell the story, or that that was really quick. Why did I just get 5 different plot points in 5 pages? Yeah, it's all about experience, I think, is the biggest thing to kind of figure out your pacing and just keep on writing and keep on reading to kind of flesh that out. I don't know if anyone is ever perfect in their pacing in that regard, but you can always become better.
And we're being joined, before we pass it off to Varian, I just want to bring him into the room. Chuck's here. We'll be right with you, Chuck. We're just continuing the conversation about pacing right now. Varian's up. So talk to us from a publisher's standpoint. Do you read all the books before they go to press?
I do. That's around the time that I have no choice but to read them. Because if it's a creator-owned book, I try to give my creators a lot of time to create their own book. I don't want to tell them what they can and can't do. So when I get the book, I will overlook it throughout the creative process, but when I get it before it goes to print, I read through it. A lot of times what you have is if it's a first time creator, I pay a lot more attention to it because sometimes those, we've all did our first comic. You remember that. That's that dream you're chasing right now. That's the high you're chasing still. Trying to get that, that first book that you put out. And some people rush to do that. And so their storytelling, their pacing is way off there. And they're rushing to get that book done. They want it out. They want to get behind that table at the convention and say, look what I did. And don't get me wrong, I love that hunger. I love people having that fire in their belly to do that. But sometimes it can lead to problems where, I have to call Chuck in and tell him, hey, please look at this book, look at the script. It's horrible.
Life's tough, man.
Yeah.
Chuck, you weren't here for intros. For those who might not know who you are, because of course we're reaching all new audiences during this turbulent time. Just give them a quick recap of who you are and how they can find you.
Yeah, I'm Chuck Pino. I'm a writer, editor, and reviewer. You can find me on Facebook, Chuck Pineau, Twitter @ChuckyPin, and of course you can find my review site on YouTube and on multiple websites, Chuck's Raw Reviews.
So what are the top mistakes you're seeing? We just talked about the things we saw as reviewers. What are you catching before it gets printed? Because you're an editor, so that's going to be the next round. We'll start with Chuck and go in reverse now. What are the biggest issues? Forget spelling because everyone screws up on spelling.
Okay, good.
Let's remove that just from the thing. What are the big issues you're seeing as an editor that you're like, hey, hit the brakes. This needs to be fixed right away?
I mean, the real issue is that if you're catching it and it's like done, ready to go to print, a lot of times it almost feels like it's too late. You know what I mean? Because they're ready to go. And you're like, well, we're finding issues with art and all this kind of stuff. And like, yeah, well, we're done. You know what I mean? Like I paid my artist, they're finished. It's a tough time. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been brought into the last minute and I'm like, what do you want me to do? I want you to edit it. Well, it's done. Like you needed someone way earlier than at the last second. If you bring me in and the book's complete, really at that point, it's, can we move some panels around? Are there some things that we can do? Because at that point, it's just proofing.
Right.
So how early should you be brought in then as an editor? Do you want to be brought in on idea to script, like right around that?
I want to be brought in pre-script.
Okay.
Preferably. That way, because the thing is that like from that point we can get all your plot points settled out. We know where you're moving from, because like if you've already jumped into the script, you've already possibly started making some errors. But if we can get there in that outline, give you a strong outline, you have a really good chance of making it all the way and really being able to pull something that at the end you just feel much more proud of.
That makes sense. What do you think, Varian?
I mean, exactly. The earlier you can bring an editor on, the better. I mean, I would again, I see people, they want to get that book out and they lock themselves away for a month if you're lucky, and they knock that book out and they come to you and then there's errors and it's too late. I mean, they've invested time or money, like Chuck said, into the artwork, into the getting it done, and now there's little to no change. Even if I take it to an editor, they're like, what do you want me to do? I mean, it's too late, everything's here. So yeah, the earlier you can get it to an editor, the better. The earlier that you can get eyes on it, the better. I've had people tell me I'm not fixing it, it is what it is. They don't care about spelling errors. They don't care. You really start to see when people start to think this is a cash grab business, that, hey, comics are hot right now. Look, I'm only doing this to get that Netflix deal.
Well, and that's got to be tough on you because you're the publisher. Like your company is on there. Like for me, I'm just the editor. So if someone says, like I had someone where I went through, I corrected, I completely proofed the book, and then they're like, well, honestly, a publisher picked me up and they want to publish it as is, so I'm not going to go back and do the work. I said, great, keep my name off it. See ya. That's
a
you,
lot.
man. But
Yeah.
How do they get picked up with all that?
Yeah.
dude, honestly, all I can tell you is that publisher, I have never been able to look the same at ever since, and they're still around, still trying to get people to do something. And even when they're trying to do stuff that's not necessarily publishing, I'm like, no, man, if you don't care about spelling, it tells me about everything else that you don't care about.
That's true.
So, yeah. I don't want to say the name publicly. I don't want to attack anybody, but they're not getting my business. And they've tried. They've tried to get my wife's book, my book, and I'm like, nope, it's not happening. Sorry, dude.
So what do you think? What are the positions where you bring an editor in for you personally? And have you edited? Have you actually gone to the
Yeah,
editing?
I have edited before, and yeah, I would say the time would be probably script. I don't know. I feel like outline, you're still like figuring out your story. I think it depends how close you are with an editor. Like, I don't know if you don't know that person. I think sometimes it's hard to figure out your own creative juices as a writer. So I would say outline first, and then once you're ready to script, then you bring on the editor. So don't start the scripting, but at least have like a full out outline of like, this is where I want to go with it. This is the issue. This is really the series even. Like, I wouldn't say just issue one. Like, tell me what, like, this, is it a mini? Is it ongoing? What's the arc? Like, figure out all that stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You're hitting every point there. And trust is so huge. Like, you can't even, it doesn't matter how amazing the editor is. If you don't trust them, or how amazing the writer is, if you guys don't trust each other, it's not going to work. So,
yeah, and you figure that out
you.
too. Yeah, you figure out that collaboration, and you know it's okay if it doesn't work, but you have to be upfront and honest with yourself and with that editor if it's not working.
So now let's talk about something that really grinds my gears, and we'll go in the reverse order again. Lettering. I have a pet peeve for where the actual tail of the lettering balloon goes. I have seen cars talk. I've seen walls talk. I've seen trees talk. And to me, it'll instantly. And I studied lettering, so this might be just a me thing. Like Chuck has the editing, you have the editing. As reviewers, does that matter to you? As a reviewer, does that matter to you? And as an editor, do you get to see the script? Because I found out a lot of editors don't see the final book before it gets printed. They get the script, they get that, and then they go, okay, I'll fix the thing, and no one ever shows it one last time. I know. I've always shown Chuck. Yeah, I've always shown Chuck. Even I'm just like, look, I fixed everything. You can give it a look. I think it's good. And he's like, okay, cool. I've never thought not to share it with my editor before it goes to print.
Yeah, because obviously there's more to the story after your script is done. There is lettering, there is coloring, and there is art, and you have to usually work with that artist or colorist or whatever to make sure it's all seamless. But yeah, going back to the lettering thing, I don't know, yes and no. I think especially in indie comics, there are some forgivable stuff. If there's one little mistake of, okay, I don't, maybe not car talking, but maybe the balloon's not exactly the best perfect place to be, I can forgive it as a critic, I guess. It's hard because, like I say, I look for content, but there's lettering problems everywhere. Then it's just like, that's content too, obviously. But yeah, I think it depends how bad it is, I would say. Like, yeah, if it's car talking, that's not good. But if it's like, maybe this balloon could have been placed in a better area, that way the artwork could have shined the most, then there's some forgivable things there.
And Varian, who is our birthday boy,
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Well, that's it's tomorrow, but yeah, like.
But you're here now. We should all
I'm
sing
here now.
happy
So
birthday.
yeah.
You excited for
As we wash our hands.
Yeah. It's
I
like,
got you Purell. I knew what you wanted this year.
Thank you. I
bitch.
appreciate it. Yeah. I Purell, man, that's expensive stuff right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to lettering, you can have fantastic art, fantastic colorists. I mean, quality paper. The book could be great, but that bad lettering will snatch you right out of a book. And I've seen it, and I've got books on lettering, and I'm still not. And I've read them all cover to cover, and I'm still not comfortable lettering. So I still like tossing it over to people that I know. Luckily, I know some letterers that are very quick and they're very good at their jobs. And then I know some people who tried lettering their first book, and it shows. And they think they did a good job, and I told some of them, no, you didn't. They get really mad. I did a great
It's an
job.
art. It's very much an art, and I think people need to know that. I think people think, oh, it's just putting letters on a page. It's like, nah. It's like there's a reason why one person is doing that and made that their career, because it's I would say a part of graphic design. You have to have an eye for it.
Yeah.
And Varian, I would thank you to stop picking on the book. I told you it was a creative choice. I did it on purpose. I do know how to letter. Everyone was really surprised when I could letter. They're like, why didn't you just letter this way from the beginning? So stop, Varian. I get it. The first one you didn't like.
No, it wasn't your book, but now I'm going to go through it now with a fine-tooth comb and really nitpick it now.
You don't own the first book, so you can't judge it.
Yeah. I'll get a hold of it. I'll figure it out. I know Chuck's got a copy somewhere. He'll send it to me.
But
I'm your boy.
But thanks for being on the program today, and I'm sure you'll be on another one. Maybe we'll get you on one tomorrow so we can sing happy birthday properly.
Thank you. I gotta get out of here, but I did want to stop by, especially because I've done a lot of panels with Chuck, but now I'm on here with big stars like Kat, so I'm moving up.
Well, it was nice seeing you now on the internet, because actually we met originally like physically, which is like a rarity. So
yeah, MegaCon. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
All right, guys, you all stay safe and stay healthy.
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
Happy birthday, homie.
All right, thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Rob. Send me my Purell. I've been waiting for
it. All right. See you later. All right, Chuck. Now we've dealt with lettering. I've broken rules. I've been in trouble for it. But ultimately, I've always respected it as a craft. I don't accept certain mistakes, and I get very honest about it. And it's been the one thing I've gotten in a lot of trouble of. You've asked me about lettering. Like, we've had talks about when you've asked me an opinion on things in the past, when you've gotten like, is this okay? How have you learned it? Because you studied lettering. Like, you're one of the few editors I know who actually went deep into it, and you know more than I think most do. Talk to us about the journey.
Yeah, well, so I'm lucky to be a part of the Comic Book Editors Alliance on Facebook, and my mentor is Steve Cole, who is like on another level, man. Like, dude, he soaks all that in, and so he's had several big meetings and seminars on lettering, and so I've gladly jumped into every one I could to try to learn and pick stuff up. And it's not about teaching you how to, it's about, what works, what doesn't, the rules, double dashes, crossbar eyes, all that kind of stuff. So I really went deep into it, and because you want to give your customers the most value. Like, I don't like the idea that I've missed something or there's something I don't know. And so if I can come in and teach them something and give them a better product and a better chance to show something really cool off to a publisher and really make it happen, I want to do it.
All right. So the next part of our creative process, of course, we go beyond the lettering. We've talked about the editing. Let's talk about the script. Identify some of the problems you guys have noticed in the past that are reoccurring problems through creators. What are you guys seeing that creators seem to always make a mistake on? And I'm interested in this because I see my own stuff as I do reviews and help people.
I just think it's such a big question.
Right.
Scripting, I mean, obviously dialogue. I think you could tell when somebody has just done a first draft and they're like, it's done. It's like, no, dude. And also I think that a lot of people don't ask for other people's eyes. I think that's so important. And also, I mean, I'm lucky I got an MFA in television, which is cool. But that also gave me the opportunity to know more writers and just to know more people from different backgrounds. So, and then also just being in the comic industry for so long, I'm able to ask so many different types of people opinions on the script and get different feedback, which I think is really important. And to really take that feedback, know how to take criticism and understand it's not against you, but you have to take that in and understand what you want to say. Okay, I could change that. This is something I don't want to change. I mean, obviously, I think you should take notes as much as possible. So that's a big thing. Going back to your like original questions, problem with scripts. It's just so tough. I would say not knowing the full story, not knowing the world, not knowing your characters. Oh, a big one's not knowing your hook. I think a lot of times people are just like, oh, I wrote this down. It's cool because I wrote it, but not understanding from a business standpoint how you're going to sell it and why other people would be interested. Like if you're picking up a Marvel or DC or Image, like why are you spending your money on this? Why should somebody spend money on your book? What's the actual hook? If you were in an elevator for a minute or two with a producer, how would you hook that person to buy your product? And I think that's a big thing I see is that at the end, this looks exactly the same as any other comic. How do you make it original for yourself?
What do you think, Chuck?
Well, I mean, yes, I totally agree with what Catherine was talking about there. So much of that. And I mean, obviously there's a lot more. You know what? A lot of times what I'll tell someone is, imagine you're actually opening the book. You have to kind of see that in front of you. So I'll go like this a lot and I'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because I had a guy send me a script and okay, yeah. So he sent me a script and he had this beautiful double-page spread for pages 5 and 6. And I'm like, you can't do that. And he's like, oh yeah, man, no, I can totally do that. I'm like, no, that's literally the same piece of paper. You can't do it. It's 2 sides of the same piece of paper. And he's like, oh wait, what? I'm like, yeah, man, like you have to go 4, 5 or 6, 7, but you can't do 5, 6. And he's like, oh, damn. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. And it's just like even little things like that. I also, I like to tell, I like to tell my clients, hey, formatting does kind of matter. Like, you don't have to get really like nitty gritty, but I'd really like to see, one of the things I like to see that a lot of people don't actually mention is I want to know how many panels is on a page before you even look at the page. So I'd like to see at the top, page 1, 5 panels. And the reason
it's so weird that people don't do that. Like it's so strange. That's like from day one, I've always done that. I've used the thing is with comic scripting, it is hard. There is no go-to guide because it's just like, yeah, there is such a variety. Like I personally use Celtex because I come from a screenwriting background. So I'll use that and make it more of like a Bendis type script where he does more screenwriting. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter how you do it, but like, tell us how many panels are there, or else you're writing like sometimes you'll get stuck doing like 8 panels. Like, God, I feel bad for your artist.
Right, and also the thing is that it's easy for me to then flip through and go, hey man, do you realize that like almost every page, like most of your pages are 6 panels? Like you end up in this like this just constant, like every page ends up looking like the other page before it. And so I'll tell them, like, it's very easy to look and see, like, you've got 6 panels on almost every page, or, you know, you're constantly 5, 6. We need to play around with this a little bit, you know? Yeah, and that goes back to the pacing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, just understanding the craft. I think that's the biggest thing. I think I think you might have been the person who mentioned it, maybe as Varian, but some people do go into comics just wanting to make it a TV show, making it a movie, and understanding, like, yeah, that's okay. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think you need to understand the craft and understand what a comic is before you do that. And just read. Like, for me, I read like 10 to 20 books a week. I mean, yes, because of my job, but it's still, I think it's so important just to see what other people are doing and seeing, look at a book and see how many panels are on there. Like, does 7 work for you? Does 4 work for you? And also knowing your artist, what works best too, because some artists have different styles and depending on your collaboration with your artist. Yeah.
It was funny. I was reviewing one book and it was one of these weird ones where basically he came to me and he said, look, I need you to review my book. And I said, well, you know, it might take a while. And he goes, well, no, I need an editor to just go over it. Just do me a quick once over, tell me what my issue is. And I was like, all right, whatever. So, you know, I just, I charged him a small amount, went over the books and let them know. And I said, dude, your artist is dropping like anywhere from 8 to 12 panels on a page. Did you seriously write that? He's like, oh, no, that's my artist. That's what he likes to do. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Because I'll tell you, if I sent someone a script and it said 8 or 12 panels, that artist is walking. Like, I
was gonna say they probably wouldn't accept it unless you are. I don't even know who wants to do that, but that's awesome. I
have noticed it's a manga thing. Like in manga and animes, you get a lot of you can get an awful lot of panels on a page. I find, which, again, if that's your style and that's what you're doing, I'm totally okay with that, as long as they're cool with it. I almost feel like they should get a higher page rate because they're
they definitely
so
should
much work, right?
But then it also goes down to creativity, but also just goes into any creative medium, knowing the rules before you break them. So if that was like his first comic, I know it was like his artist or his artist wanted to do 8 panels, but maybe doing another comic. That way it's like kind of understand the basics first, because that's definitely not all artists. And it's hard to write 8 to 12 panels on a page. So like know the basics before you break them.
Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know how I would go about. I don't think I've ever written that many panels on a page. I know that I had an artist who said, can I throw an inset in there and turn 7 into 8? And I was like, dude, go ahead. Like, that's fine. But I was not going to do that.
Yeah, I think the most I've ever written is maybe up to 8. I think that's the most I've written on a page, never more than that. And my artist for like Ballet Daughter, he does tend to add more panels, but that's, again, our creativity that we've ended up having is just like, oh, you know the story, draw the way you want to draw it. And, you know, we've had that collaboration, but that was after like 4 issues, not like issue 1.
Now, it's funny you guys are talking about pacing, and we've talked about it. One of the things that we didn't really talk about was the pacing in the art. So many times I see things, and Chuck has been on a program where I've a thread where we've talked about this, how the different positioning of the characters sometimes gets inverted and no one notices it. Someone throws a punch and then suddenly the guy's across the room and there's no in between, no reference to it. It's very jarring. How do you guys suggest someone go, like a writer, look at an artist? Because sometimes I think writers are intimidated to speak up to artists. How do you teach your writer? Because there's an editor, you guys are talking to the writer always, never the artist. How do you teach your artist or your writer to talk better to their artists to get those things to stop happening? Because that can really ruin a book, those missing action points.
I mean, I think Facebook is such an awesome tool. If your artist is on Facebook, just start having a conversation with them. And like, I mean, I would say Axe maybe sending pages there as they work on it. So you guys can talk about it. And then that really brings a relationship with each other. And then you're confident enough to ask like, hey, like, what works best for you for this type of scene? You ask them questions too. So say just build a relationship with them, because I think every artist is different, just like every writer is different. And, understandably, not every writer is, outgoing, but that doesn't mean you don't get the confidence to ask your artist those type of questions.
Also, that's stuff that you need to be considering when you write the script. Like, you just punched this guy, he's on the ground. How do they stand back up again? Or what are they doing in that next panel? You can't just have them up again. So, that's not necessarily just on the artist. We have to consider that when we write our script too.
Oh, 100%. I totally agree with that, for sure.
All right. So,
by the way, I'm having a ball with you. I feel like you and I are freaking simpatico.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. This has been fun.
now this is something I know has happened. And even with me and you, Chuck, just because you are co-creator on Cat Den Supermom, you get involved directly with the two creators, the artist and the writer, and you've been in the room when there were creative differences. Do you guys feel like you're made referees sometimes unintentionally? Now, of course, in that case, you weren't a referee because you had a vested interest as a co-creator, and I've never brought you in until that moment, because when I had a decision and Chuck got to see me work, I am very much, no, this is how it will be as a writer. You're the artist, but I need this pacing to be this way. The story stays the same. You can make artistic choices. I learned that the hard way early in my career. How about you guys? Have you been brought in to play the referee to get that stuff kind of done, to have someone else explain it to the artist?
I mean, luckily I haven't. And I think I don't think any editor or any creator should be brought in just to be like, you do this and this. And then maybe like at that point, depending on where you're at, like maybe that wasn't the artist to have. I mean, I don't know, because it's hard, but you don't want to change artists from issue 2. But if you guys really don't work well together, it's just like, that's going to ruin the flow of your book either way. So
I've been brought in basically as like a tiebreaker, where the two, they were having a hard time seeing eye to eye. And it's like, well, look, we all know who's paying me, but for the best of the book, this is kind of how I see it. And, maybe this is something that would work and make both of you happy. So, I have had to come in that regard, but, really at the end of the day, it's kind of all about who's the leader, a lot of times we see, especially in indie comics, the writer is usually paying for the project and they're kind of the front of it. So it's like at the end of the day, it's their project. If this is their vision, you have to follow that. And that's even as an editor, I tell people, look, what I'm giving you is suggestions. And so this is how I see it and what I think. If you can't trust those suggestions and you're, really not against it, then maybe we're not meant to work together, and that's okay. But yeah, and then, of course, when you work for, as an editor, if you work for a company, it's like, now you're more the leader as the editor. It's just like, no, this is what they want, so this is what we need to see.
Yeah, I would say, go on, Chuck, yeah.
I've been lucky enough to work in both capacities. So it's weird. It really does depend on the situation.
I would say it depends on if you're a work for hire or not. Yeah, most artists in the indie community are work for hire. They are getting paid right away. The writer, it's a lot harder for them to get paid, and they have to work a lot of the back ends to get paid, and obviously sell it at conventions and do all that fun jazz. So yeah, in that regard, maybe it comes from a writing point of view. I think the writer always has the standpoint if they're paying for the project. But if it's something that you guys are both not, like if they're not getting paid for it, then I think there's an argument there. Then it's truly both your projects.
Now, let me ask you guys a question. This one is kind of pertaining to it, but it's going in a different way. And it's something a lot of time editors miss. And I'm going to ask you guys if you had experience with it. I have on projects where someone else has been involved getting me the files. So I have had this happen to me, and I caught it the first time, and I made sure to ask if this was the right file, and I was told it was. And later we found out it was the wrong file I had been given. The thing I'm talking about is resolution. The amount that the picture will look blurry if printed versus on a computer screen. And I think that's an issue that I'm seeing a little bit more now that people are tending to try to get Photoshop on their own, or they're sending each other compressed files and no one realizes they're compressed files. And sometimes you don't know it until you print it. For the record, I print all my comic books. My self-published comic books all get printed on my printer at home, specifically to make sure there's no resolution issue. And if there is, when I've worked in collaboration with others, I've pointed it out. And I think sometimes people, and this has been said to me and it kills me, oh, don't worry, it'll print fine. It'll print better on a better printer. I've heard that.
No, you have to have the highest resolution.
And it didn't work that way. But have you guys directly dealt with that problem where suddenly, not only if you're even a review, mind you, it doesn't have to be a personal one, where you've seen, oh God, this is a bad picture that they used or a bad image. Have you guys seen that happen?
I haven't, because I've worked with, I don't know, I think pretty professional people in that regard, but I could definitely see that being an issue. And, you know, a lot of times if you're working on something over and over and over again, sometimes you're like, oh, is this the right file? What, you know, things happen. Like, you know, people make mistakes, but you just have to figure out as a team and trust each other that you need to know that you have to work on the highest resolution. And yeah, I'm lucky enough I haven't had that issue.
Chuck?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing, to be honest.
Okay. Moving on to the next topic we have. Does size matter? I know that some people have complained about shorter books not trying to equal up, black and white being compared to the color books. That becomes an issue. And for price tag, and this was actually brought up by someone who direct messaged me about it. How long does their comic book have to be? And they want to release a 12-page comic book. And I strongly suggested they did not release such a comic book. What do you guys think? Does size matter? Is there a standard of quality which requires these many pages before you can call it a comic book? Because wouldn't it be an ash can otherwise?
That's a fun conversation. Yeah, no, I think you should. It is. It's like, because I
want to be at your dinner party.
Let's start talking about size of comics, because that is the main topic. But no, it is an interesting conversation because I think if you're going for a 12 issue, make an anthology book then. Just to have a lot of short stories, because I consider that a short story. If you're going to release a novel, would you release a 12-page novel? No, you'd release multiple short stories in one book, an anthology book. So yes, I do think that to get your bang for your buck, they have to be at least the least amount, I would say 18 pages. Like that's even cutting it short. But you know, average is usually like 21 to 25 pages. So I think as consumers, especially comic consumers, are also close, and we all want to spend our money in the right way. And we're a business where it is very much about collecting and value. It's very important, especially for me as in this business, as a consumer, as everything, as a writer, to give what your customer deserves. And I don't think your customer deserves to pay $5 for a 12-page story. And I think you should then enter an anthology book if you're planning to do that.
Chuck, you're up.
Yeah, you can literally have any size, but it's the same as like trying to sell a 20,000 word novel. Like that's not a novel. You know what I mean? It's a novella at best, and maybe even not that. So yeah, no, size does matter as far as especially what you're willing to charge for it. But like, yeah, if you just have a 12-page thing, you can certainly print it and sell it. But you know, you need to know what that should go for, only to be fair. But also, when you have that few pages, the less pages you have, kind of the less margin you have as far as actually making some money, like some kind of profit margin, because it's not that much more expensive to do a 20-page than a 12-page book. So I'd almost rather, like, just as far as printing is concerned, so
better to do more pages.
Yeah, so I'd rather have the 20 plus, put out a full issue, and really feel like I've got something behind me. If it's anything less than that, I would rather present it, like she said, as an anthology, or maybe as an ash can to get people excited about the upcoming series.
And also know you might lose some money because you're using it as a promotional tool instead of, whatever. But going back to the other question, I was kind of attached to this, to black and white. See, I feel very differently about that. I think black and white should be considered the same amount as your colored. And maybe because I do release a black and white comic with my colored book, but I think of like the Terry Moores, the guy who did Strangers of Paradise and Motor Girl and all that. He's selling this comic for the same exact price because it's part of the art. So yeah, I think that's an artistic point of view. So I think those should be sold the same price.
Same thing. I've done color and I've done black and white, and Belial's my black and white book, and I love that book. And again, it was an artistic choice more than anything else. And so, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. And I mean, manga, look at that. Like they're being sold for the same price, and rightfully so. And they're all pretty much black and white.
Speaking of color, let's talk about coloring issues. We brought this up at the beginning of the show. Let's circle back. And let's talk about some things for people to be aware of. I know we've talked about skin tone and ethnicity being misrepresented, but what other issues do you guys see besides trees and possibly humans being miscolored? One of the things I noticed, and I'd recently said this, was one of my artists forgot to put fingernails on someone. I manually went in and put fingernails on a person and just colored it. It wasn't that hard. I was able to use Photoshop on it. But that was a huge mistake by the artist because they had colored it, they had drawn it, and they had never noticed the fingernails were missing. And I released that cover as a cover as it was with the missing fingernails to see if anyone ever noticed it, because that way I could reprint the cover later with the fix on it and I could tell the difference. No one ever picked up on it. Not one person noticed the missing fingernails. But to me, it stuck out like a sore thumb in the beginning. And that pun intended. But what do you guys think about coloring? Hit me up. What are your opinions?
Yeah, I mean, coloring issues are definitely an issue. And I think, again, the biggest one is ethnicity. I've definitely seen. But I think also let's talk about the positive of me not coloring mistakes, but what a colorist can find. I was just getting a short story colored for my trade that I was doing for like Fall Like Daughter. And there was like a tip of a tattoo that was missing. Like if you didn't have it, it would have been fine. It wasn't the whole tattoo, but it was just like a little tip of it. And she's like, hey, I could like change that for you. Like I'm just be able to add it there. So you want me to do it? And I'm like, yeah, let's make this all very consistent. I didn't notice because again, it was like a little inch of the tattoo that was supposed to be shown. So I think that's kind of cool to see a colorist also be able to catch things as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's funny. I had this one panel. It was just a panel in Welcome to the Void where there was two characters, and they were kind of, one was talking to the other, and the other was very kind of morose and downtrodden. And the colorist came in behind and put this big, beautiful moon behind, and just kind of really filled in the scene and whatnot. I was just like, oh wow. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times they can not only fix some mistakes and whatnot in coloring, but even just really make a scene pop so much more and just be so much more beautiful than it was before.
For sure. Always find the right colors, and once you do, keep them forever because they're so important and really can change the artwork.
Totally agree.
Now, circling back to letters, one of the things I've noticed when I've personally lettered, whether it be my project or someone else's, I often find mistakes because as a letterer, you also have to decide breaking sometimes a sentence apart to make it fit within the balloons. And even by doing that, you can suddenly notice a pacing problem with dialogue. Or you can notice, like you said, there was a part in a book where I was lettering the original book, and I noticed that I originally gave a character tattoos, and the artist forgot to draw the tattoos in. And it wasn't one panel she didn't draw it in. There were several panels where she had forgotten to draw the tattoos in. And I was like, okay, I can just change it and take out the line about tattoos, and we fixed the problem. How many times have you guys had a letterer catch those mistakes? And do you think a letterer becomes art editor when they're doing their job right?
I think it depends on your relationship with your editor. I mean, your letterer. I don't know if it's their part of their job by any means, but I think it's really nice if they do catch those things to make it easier for you. But also, I feel that should be caught on the writer side and also the editor. Those are things that should have been caught.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of things being caught by the letterer, but not so often.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on then to shipping. What shipping mistakes are people making? I know it's after production, but it was asked of me to include this because it is a mistake a lot of creators do. So what are your suggestions for what to do and what not to do when it comes to shipping?
I would say never. I mean, maybe this is for the creator, but like never try to underprice your shipping because then you're just losing profit. I think if you really don't know your shipping price, like maybe try to go maybe $1 or $2 over, and then you can kind of correct it after, and then pay back the person that maybe paid for shipping extra $1 or $2. So, but also like go to your post office. It's easy to say, hey, like, can I weigh this? That way you can figure out the shipping for the future. So I don't know, just be prepared and just know that's part of your profit if you screw that up.
Yeah. And now a lot of that can actually be done at home with like stamps.com and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, just learn as much as you can about that, because that is where most people go broke. I mean, I think we've all heard about the story of the guy. He pulled in like, it was like $30,000 on a Kickstarter or something, and then ended up going so far over the shipping that he just kind of snapped and burned everything, burned the comic, just burned it all down. And I'm like, whoa, which is a massive overreaction, obviously, but yeah, you can get really, really burned on no pun intended on shipping. So you need to maybe, especially like I'm thinking like Kickstarters and whatnot, you need to kind of almost overcharge.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks, but you have to do it because, like, if you don't want to get a dent in your profit, just know how much. Really, before you do your Kickstarter, add up how many books you think you're going to sell about. Well, it doesn't even matter because each thing has a little shipping price, so that doesn't even matter. Just know individually how much it's going to cost to ship stuff, and you'll be fine.
Now, a couple of things I would add to this, just because it was asked of me, make sure that you're using a proper mailer. Gemini is the standard at the moment. Using a Gemini mailer absolutely will save your comics. However, if you're going to use a UPS box or a box to ship things, make sure you're wrapping the corners of the comic books. Even if you're putting it in with t-shirts, the corners of comic books are constantly getting damaged because they're not protected. Just because you put them in a bag and board, it's not Superman's lair. You haven't put them in a car. They're going to shift in a box if they're not put in a position to stay. So another thing is to also tape it into place within the box. Gemini is only 50 cents. We have a Facebook user. I don't see where they're coming from. I don't know if one of you guys shared the video, so it's not registering it. And for those watching the video live, you have to actually give permission to StreamYard to show your personal information. So right now we've gotten Yo, Hi Guys, and Gemini is expensive. I'm not sure if that's the same person, but think about it this way. A Gemini mailer is 50 cents. Sending out another comic is $2.50 to $5, depending on your shipping, your cost of printing a book. So 50 cents is insurance, and that's just a smart way to look at it. But if you guys don't have anything else on shipping, we're going to move on to paper quality.
No, but when it comes to that, make that part of your price as far as either the book or shipping.
Yeah, it should be built into your shipping on Kickstarter.
Yeah, certainly. Like if it's $4.50 for you to ship across the country, then go, okay, well it's $5 because I have to pay for the Gemini.
Yeah, exactly. And I know most shipping companies now, the what do they call it when they do it for you? Fulfillment. The fulfillment companies are all moving to Gemini. It's actually becoming such a big thing that people are not using certain fulfillments because of it. And I had a conversation with the printer about this, and I told him, no, you need to get these. You need to get in that business to use these because it's just what we're expecting now. And to the Facebook user, please tell us your name because I don't know who's talking to us, and I'd like to give you a shout out for watching. So print quality paper. How do you, and me and Chuck, this is a personal thing. We had something printed and it was horrible. Jackson's just found out his battery died. So what do you guys think about paper quality? Do you guys ask for test samples before you go with the printer?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, so when I was with Short Fuse, we had a specific printer. I knew what the quality was. So for my single issues, I've been good with that. But going into my trade, I had a friend who I really liked his trade, and that was kind of my example. And I was like, okay, I really like this. who's your printer? And then I went to them and I was able to do that. But one of my friends is just going into comics now. I said, you get a sample to make sure, because it was a really good price he got for it. And I was like, all right, make sure what the quality is. And then he got literally in like a couple of days, they sent him an example of his comic, of his actual comic, what it would look like. And it looked good. Now he's going to buy the rest, So yeah, paper quality is so important. It honestly shows between an amateur and a professional is so freaking important.
Yeah, I mean, you were there when I picked up that book, Rob, and I was so mad, like just so unhappy with the quality of it. I mean, it sounds lame maybe, but the fact of the matter is, when you pick up that book, there's this tangible, tactile, there's a reason why we buy physical copies. And so when you pick it up and it's rough and it's already telling you something about the book and the production, and it's not a good message unless that's what you want to do. Say like you wanted to go newsprint or something. It's like, okay, well, that's what you wanted. You were going for a specific thing, and that's what you'll get. But that's not what we were going for. And yeah, it says something, and you don't want that. But most printing companies, they'll allow you to do a proof, which it's a little bit extra, but it's worth it just for them to send you a proof so you can say, yeah, okay, I've gone through the whole book. I really like, because that also allows you to look at the colors, make sure that the colors all came out properly, make sure that, the bleeds and the lines and everything inside all matched up and that they have no issues. And then you can sign off it, and that your customers are going to be happy because you're happy.
And to what Chuck is saying, the best way I've described it to people online, because it's hard. If I have the books, it's easy to show them what I'm talking about. I said, go to Walmart, touch their toilet paper, and then remember how your toilet paper feels at home, and you'll instantly know what we're talking about with paper. I remember I called up. It wasn't the deal I made, but the books were sent to me because I was going to be the fulfillment. And I called them up on FaceTime, and I was like having a nervous breakdown over the way it felt. And they both thought I was crazy.
No, I know it's so important. And I understand the nervous breakdown. I think we've all felt it. When you're a product that you work so long on, you want everything to be perfect as it can be.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking. But we got to reprint it with the better quality, and we're very happy with our printer. Give a shout out to Comics Impression, who do an amazing job on all the books I've worked on since then. So nothing but love for them. We're going to switch topics, and we're going to go over to the less and smaller details. Here we go. Do I put a price tag on my book? And if not, why do you think a price tag is a bad thing to put on a book?
Oh, I put a price tag. I think it's nice to show what your price is, but if it doesn't look nice on your cover, or your back, then don't do it. It all depends on, I don't know. I think that's personal preference. I personally like it because it shows, okay, this is the flat rate, just like a Marvel or DC book would have. So, but then I guess for people who want to keep changing their prices, I guess, but I don't recommend you change your prices.
Early on, I haven't put the prices on mine, and part of it's look, but also because you're feeling out the market, what it can sell for, what it can't. Because I'll tell you, like, I had a book where I was selling it for $3, and it was flying, but I had a lot of people be like, "Well, man, you should really be charging $5."
Most people would say that with a $3 book for sure. We sold originally for $3 and then sold it for $5, and everyone's like, yeah, that makes more sense for an indie book, especially how much you're putting into it.
Yeah, and it did not affect my sales. Like $5 still sold just as well. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. So I think early on to kind of feel things out, that's perfectly fine. But eventually, like if you want to be in stores and stuff, it's probably going to end up having to be on there anyways.
Yeah, $5 is usually the best price point if you're doing like a 20-something comic for indie.
So for me, I hate the $4.99 and that kind of stuff because then I can't tell you how often I've heard of guys, they put $4.99 on their book and they're at a convention. Someone's like, "Can I have my penny back?" It's like,
it's like, no.
Have a penny at a convention? Nobody has pennies.
You know what you do though? If someone's going to make you go into your pocket, be like, "Oh, I forgot to charge you tax." Oh, you don't want the penny. Oh, so you don't want the penny. Okay. Speaking of actually extra charges, do you guys think that, and this is just off the cuff because we're talking about quality and printing and all that, do you think you should be offering a board and bag at a show, at a con? Is that your responsibility?
That's a good question too. Okay. There's two, I think, answers for that. Yes, for the professionalism, but understand that's also going into your profit because it is expensive to get bags and boards, and a package could be like, I think like $20 for just like I don't know. I buy it in bulk, so I don't even know how much each individual is. But yeah, you go on Amazon, it's a pretty penny to buy. So you have to understand, if you could put that in with your budget that you have.
Chuck?
Yeah, no, I agree with that statement, actually. Though at a convention, it's easy enough just to tell someone, just to ask them, do you want a bag and board?
Yeah.
Is it an option? And then if they don't, you're like, great, cool. Hey, you just saved me a little bit of money. It's the same thing. Like, it all comes together with, when they buy it, you say, do you want me to sign it? Do you want it in a bag and board? Like, there's just those kind of after questions that come afterwards,
All right, we're going to quickly read some comments and then get right back to it. It was Dan Lee that was talking to us about the Gemini mailers. The Pyramid Knights are watching. Good information, guys. Someone sells there from 5. That's, again, I don't know who that said it, but the 5 seems to be a pretty average thing. I have a penny, but it makes a difference. I hate pennies, but pricing makes a difference. We do a $3.99 floppy. Honestly, I think $3.99 is underpricing anyone in indie comics, and that's also because I know the math behind everything behind the scenes. I think that's a writer trying to compete, not realizing who they're competing with. You can't throw punches with Disney. It's not going to happen. Disney.
Yeah, they have their own printer, and they're not spending the prices we have to spend to print, or the how much you have to print to make that price go lower for you. So.
And then this comment I love. I'm going to actually show this comment. I should have showed some of these comments. I offer a board and bag at the show because I love my work.
Mm-hmm.
I love that comment.
In my point of view is like you can love your work as much as you want, but you're giving it away. So it has to do with them more than you. So it's just like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
All right, so let's move on. Okay, here's one. False advertising. What do you guys think about the cover made by a pro artist, but the interiors are made by an upcoming artist?
As a consumer, I always think a cover A should be from your interior artist, because then you're just misleading people, and I don't agree with that. You should have gotten that pro artist for your interiors then, or someone just as good. If you don't believe in your interiors, then that shouldn't be your interior artist. So I do not believe in that. But on the flip side, if you want to get a Brett Booth, you want to get a Chris Anka, and you want to spend that money, go get a B cover. Do your variants and sell it for a little higher. So that's what I would say. But always do your interior artist as your cover A, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. If you wanna play with some big boys and you wanna see some really cool art, see what your cover could look like if someone else were to play with it, then yeah, that's what variants are for. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
All right, so we've talked about the covers, but we haven't talked about the inside covers. Do you guys think that a comic should have a credit sheet or should it not have a credit sheet? And does that depend on your page count and your budget?
I don't care what you think. I think you deserve a credit page because all those people worked hard on your book. I don't care how much you have to spend on. Well, obviously you don't spend too much, usually just to get it designed. But yes, the answer is yes. Always have a credit page. And in the beginning, before you even start your comic, understand how many pages you need to print or how many pages you need to add to have that credit page, because it's unfair for your team if they're not being credited for it.
Yeah, 100%. It's silly. And you know what? It's almost disingenuous to not have credits in your book, because part of the people working for you is that credit. Is people being able to look at it and say, oh, this person did pencils for this. I love these pencils. But if they look at it and they don't know who did it, what was even the point? Like, it's nice to have a paycheck, but we also need for people to know what we did and what our hands touched. So yeah, credits are so important. And I remember reviewing a book And I called someone out and I said, you know what? Don't mean to be rude, but it worries me right away that I see that an editor's not, that there's no editor on this book. And the person messaged me later and they're like, there was an editor on that book. And I said, so why didn't you credit them? Well, either you didn't have an editor and that wasn't a good idea, or you didn't credit them and that's just a dick move. So, I don't know what's well, and then a lot of times what you'll get is, well, I had an editor, my wife, come on, man. Like, I mean, if they're not professional enough that you're willing to give them credit, then that they didn't do the job. You know what I mean? If your wife or your spouse is good enough that they deserve that they really made it better than it was, then they deserve that credit and it should be on there.
And one final thing, and then we're going to get to some questions, and I don't know how we're going to deal with some of these questions just because of the nature of them, but we'll try to answer everything we can. But I wanted to touch on one final thing, and I think this one gets overlooked a lot when it comes to comic book creation, and it's a small thing, but it's a noticeable thing. What are your guys' opinions about trade, like the actual graphic novels versus floppies, and when they get
connecting these hard hitters tonight?
Yeah, because a lot of people, when they're not thinking about making a trade, they kind of make their comics so they don't flow right when it gets to a trade. You know what I mean? So what is your advice on that?
I mean, I think from a business standpoint, why are you not making a trade? It's so much easier to sell a trade than it is a floppy. As a Wednesday warrior, sure, I love my floppies, but yeah, when you're at a show, it is so much easier to push a $20 book and say, here's a full story than it is to push $5 of 4 issues, because most of the time they'll just probably buy issue 1. They're probably not going to buy all 4. But when you have a trade, they're like, ooh, that looks pretty. I'll spend the 20 on that trade. And because you spent all that time on that trade. So yeah, always do a trade. And if you're not doing a trade for whatever reason, just understand what your arc is. Like, where is your beginning, middle, and end? You shouldn't be going on forever for 100 issues. There has to be a beginning, middle, end, even for an ongoing book.
Yeah, it's funny because I reviewed a book recently, and a lot of times I'll read the book, and then because a lot of us are friends with those other creators and whatnot, I'll get in touch with them as an editor, and I'll be like, hey man, just so you're aware, like this is some stuff that I saw, just from one friend to another, just kind of trying to give you a heads up. And so for them, I said, I don't mean to be rude, but your book didn't end. Like it just kind of was done. And they said, oh, well, that's because it's a graphic novel. I said, no, it's not. They said, yeah, this is part 1 of, no, you're selling this as a floppy. Therefore, it is not a graphic novel. Oh, well, but we're going to make it one. I said, yes. So in the meantime, I pick that up. I read it as a floppy. It doesn't end. And I think this is unprofessional and ridiculous. And I'm not buying issue 2. If you're going to write a graphic novel, write it, finish
Spend
it.
that money. Yeah. Spend that money on that graphic novel.
If you're going to create a trade, which is a separate thing, you need to make sure that each of those issues have their own little ending and enough of a hook so that I'm like, great, well, now I got to get issue 2, So they're different animals. You have to know what you're doing. So going in and saying I'm doing a graphic novel, then finish it. Don't give me part of a graphic novel because it's not the same thing and people will notice. And by the time you get to the graphic novel, those people who bought the floppies probably won't, they'll either stop buying until the whole thing's done, or they might support just because they like you and they're trying to be nice. But usually for a real consumer, they'll probably either stop buying until the whole graphic novel is done, or they just are done and they won't buy it at all.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we're going to open it up to questions. Here's the first one we have. The Pyramid Knight is asking what a fair price for a penciled page is.
Ooh,
that's
that's heavy. That really depends on your artist and what they're doing. I would say the cheapest I've seen is like 30. Like that's the cheapest I've seen. But I don't know. I think it depends. Like if they're a really good artist, I think 50 is a good price. But I mean, that's not a great price for whoever's trying to buy it. But I think it's an honest price for your artist. I don't know, 40 to 50, I would say, is usually a good price. But I don't know. That's such a tough question, man. I don't know. I don't know, honestly, on that.
Let's be honest. You get what you pay for. So
What's the money, right?
right? So for $20, what are you giving me? You know, for $50, what are you giving me? My wife got pencils and inks for $50, and those pencils are gorgeous. I'm like absolutely jealous of her book already, and she only has a page. And yet for someone else, you might get that same price, and they're phoning it in because that's their low end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so really it's how do I get the best out of you? What is that price that will make you happy, that I get the best out of you, and that everything ends up looking the way we want it to look?
And one of the things with when it comes to pricing, also remember that sometimes some artists don't pencil anymore. Some have gone totally digital. There is no more pencils for them. So that's an even more complicated question, considering we're seeing almost a split now, if not more, digital artists than actual old school artists.
I've seen more digital than old school, because it's also like that's what publishers are looking for, because it's easier for them to convert everything. So
What I've been seeing a lot of is pencils and then digital inks is what I see an awful lot of.
Yep, I've
How does
seen
that
that
work?
as well.
How do you
You scan it, I believe. You
they
scan it in. Yeah.
Yeah. You just blue line it, scan it, and then go to town digitally. And I actually think that's a really good way of doing it, because you can catch a lot of those issues digitally and really make it shine.
I agree.
That makes sense. Dan Lee is asking us, if your story is more show than tell, how do we keep word pacing relevant?
Word pacing.
Same thing last night, talking about how, and I always think that words matter. And we were on a show where someone had said, and I don't know who said it, but they were like, oh, if you can't follow a story without words, then it's not a well-drawn story. And I completely disagree with that, because words matter to me. And I can make arguments back and forth, and I don't want to get into it right now, but it's an important question. How do you keep the word pacing going if you're more show than tell?
Just, I would say don't add words that you don't need. Like, I feel like a lot of times newer writers will be like, whoa, I haven't said a thing in 3 pages. I guess I'll say something because this has been action. Don't say something just to say something. Everything should be meaningful. And when it comes to pacing, understand what the script is. Even if the person's not like a consumer is not seeing what you're saying in those description boxes, or in the panels that you're describing the artist. Know those are important, because the little facial expressions or the little movements is part of the story too. So know that this is a collaborative medium. And there are some great books where there's no words at all, but that doesn't mean the writer didn't do anything. They still had to craft that story and still pace it well. So yeah, know that balloons are not the only words that you're saying, and is not the only part of pacing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in a novel, would you base a writer's talent just on the dialogue? Absolutely not, because all those descriptions and everything else is what creates that world, and that's what we've done. So I've done silent stories before with absolutely no dialogue, but then I've done ones where it's heavy dialogue. I think that the art should do a lot of the heavy lifting as far as really showing things off, and a lot of that show don't tell. But then the writing adds the nuance. They add our character voices. They really give that character their feel. Because again, if you think about even just our regular communication, what we say, our words, are only a fraction of actual communication. Your inflection, your facial expressions, your hand gestures, all that kind of stuff, all of that adds to it.
For sure.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next question from the Pyramid Knight again. He's asking, is hiring a writer page for page more than an artist? And
No.
it's also hard to set it up for you guys. a writer can write 3 pages of a comic book on one single page, or he could take 5 pages to describe, like Chuck was saying, background, little details, little items. So it's not an easy page for page. It doesn't work that way with the writer. However, I'll let you guys answer that question beyond that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, you're obviously asking for work for hire because indie creators, we pay to do stuff. And then again, you make your money after. So that's a very different beast. But if you're doing work for hire and the artist is doing work for hire, the artist is going to be paid more than the writer no matter what, because it's more time consuming for them. And yes, the page by page rate makes more sense there. For a writer, they're still paid page by page for most work for hires. It really depends on the company or depends on the person. But yeah, it usually you figure out how many pages it's going to be. It's like, this is your rate, go for it, go on town. This is what you're going to write. So, but yeah, they're always going to be paid less than an artist is the answer for that.
Yeah. Because the fact of the matter is that an artist might be able to do one, if they really push it, 2 books in a month, but a writer could bang out 6, you know, as far as scripts and whatnot. So that's really where that. So yes, a writer probably on their page rate makes less, but we can bang out more work and catch up to that to making effectively the same amount of money.
I would also say writers are more keen to owning their IPs, so they can make more in the long run as well. Because a lot of artists are just there for work for hire, and they get paid there, and that's it. For the writer, they'll get a lot of royalties and all that for the future if that's their own work, not for work for hire, just indie work.
I will also add this into the fray with it. As a writer, I have been asked to come on to be a writer of a project. And I'm kind of the opposite of an artist in a lot of ways because, and I don't know, and I'm going to toss this, guys, back to you because you're both writers. I want ownership if I'm writing. I don't have to own it outright, but I want to be able to be part of, because I'm going to put a lot into it. As a writer, you're going to put your ideas into it. I need to be part of it going forward. I don't need to be 50-50, but I need to be in the conversation, and I need it to always say co-created by Rob Anderson, because I'm going to flush it out. And this all goes back for me for the whole Bob King and the Finger issue. And, it's just how I feel. Bill Finger did not get what he deserved. What about you guys? Do you work for hire as a writer? Have you been asked to? I'm on 4 projects right now where I'm the writer, and I demanded to be part of the ownership or I would walk, and that's just who I was. So how do you guys handle it?
I've actually been looking for more work for hire to do because it's easy money, I would say, like, because you're getting paid right away. So that's what I've been looking for more because I've been doing so much creator owned work. But when it comes to, I guess it depends on what the project is. Like, I mean, you're not going to walk into Marvel or DC unless you're like Brian Michael Bendis and say, I want to own half of this. It's not going to happen. So it depends on what work for hire you're looking for. But I disagree a little bit because if they own the character and they're saying this is where you have to go with the story, it's just like, it's their project. You're just writing it for them. And I know that's weird to say, but maybe it depends how much you're putting into it, but you're being hired for work for hire, and that's what it means. It doesn't mean you own it.
Well, for me, I don't go for work for hire. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes. So you're asking if we would do, I would do work for hire. Yes.
Yeah, I ownership. Forget paying me. I'll get paid. Remember your reference to Bendis. He owns part of Spider-Man, Miles Morales, because he's the creator.
But he also did not get as much money for all those. Well, the reason he moved to DC is because he did not get as many royalties for the Jessica Jones and Miles Morales. But now he truly, really co-created and owns those characters at DC.
Yeah. No, that was contract. Yeah, and that's what you got to do. You got to work your way up sometimes. But go ahead, Chuck. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I do write for hire, and honestly, if you don't want, it's the same as with an artist. If that artist wants to collaborate and they actually want ownership of it, then guess what? You get paid a little bit less because you're going to take that money on the back end and owning the IP, etc. So if I don't own the IP, I'm going to give you my higher page rate. So I might be, let's say I'm normally $10 or $15 a page. And so that's what I am. And then it's like, oh, well, but you have no ownership of this. Once it's done, oh, cool. Well, I'm 20 now, and that's just because I have no ownership of it. I'm just doing the job. Once I'm done, I can move on and not worry about it. That means that if you're doing that, I'm also probably not going to push the job as hard, like not as much as doing a good job, but I will do a little bit of marketing, but I'm not going to work as hard on the marketing as if I actually owned it. Mm-hmm. So you do get what you paid for there. So, if you want to own it and you want the IP, then you're probably going to have to do that marketing work and you're going to have to worry about all that other stuff. Whereas I'm just worried about, does this look good? Am I happy with what happened here? Cool. Are you happy? Yeah, great. Bye. I'm moving on to the next thing. And that's what artists do. And so it works the same with us writers.
I agree.
So I have a question for you guys. It's a little bit of tea getting spilt, I admit, but it's the truth. For those who don't know, some artists will charge you less but give you less. So if you guys are getting underpaid for a project, do you write less? I mean, like, does that work with a writer? Can a writer give in less?
They definitely can. I personally have too much pride of my work to do that. I wouldn't accept the job. That's what I would do. I'd be like, hey, find someone else.
Yeah. Or if I find that that I was getting paid less than I deserved, then on the next go around, it's like, well, no, I'm deserving of this. And if they say, well, no, I'm not willing to pay that, and it's like, then thanks. It was nice working with you. Like I know what I'm worth. It's the same as editing. I know what I'm worth. And if you can't do that, maybe you're not ready for me. Maybe you need to work with someone else.
All right. So I don't know if this is a question. I outline a book in a day or two.
I think you can make it a question. Like, how much do you outline?
Yeah. So I'm going to
are we talking about like art or writing or?
I don't know where to go with this one. So
I think you should never give yourself a day's time period to come up with a story. Like, I think, you should just put out time to write. Never say the outline will be done in a day or two. Because, like, even for a script, there's some scripts I could write out in like a week and it'll be done, and it's like great. But then there's some stories that'll take me a year to 2 years, and this, TV, comics, whatever, to figure it out. So I think every story and every narrative is different, and every idea comes differently.
Well, and also a lot of us have other projects that we're working on. So it's like, oh, well, I want the outline in a day. No, like I have 6 other projects. This is when it's going to, this is where I'm going to aim for. I should be able to bang it out maybe in a day or two, like get you the outline that you're looking for. Say if I'm your writer for hire. Yeah, I should be able to get you an outline in a day or two. But in the meantime, it's going to be stewing in the back of my brain while I work on everything else.
And it goes back to, again, a first draft is not your last draft, and even outlines. It depends. Everyone outlines differently. Some outlines are just like, here's like a bones. I'm going to go into some writing now, which is perfectly fine. You should outline, figure out what your story is before you write. That's for sure. But every outline's different, so it depends on how far you go with it, and that's okay. Just know that a story changes throughout time, and you have to keep developing it. It's not done in a day. You have to give it to people, give it to an editor, give it to people you trust, and then work on it continuously, because your story is going to continue to change.
And our friend Dan Lee from Facebook asks us, how does IP copyrights work to own your own story legally? I'll give it to them in a second, but an IP copyright, if you're copying right through the United States government, that's how. I mean, I'll let them expand on it, but as long as you're paying the filing fee and no one has filed before you with the same idea, you will get an IP. You will be awarded the IP. I have several actually IPs, and some of those IPs I cheat. I make anthology stories, like short story books, and I send in all my short stories. So I've officially copyrighted 15 to 20 stories in one go around. So, but I'll leave it up to you guys. Go ahead, answer the question for Dan.
I mean, I think you answered that one, but I also would say that's definitely, I think, more of a question for a lawyer as well, because those are going to be people that know a lot more than us in that regard. So
Also, remember, you can't copyright an idea.
Hmm.
So you can copyright names when you're coming up with names. Also, I can't tell you enough. SEO. You need to be, checking online. Are these names used? What comes up when I type this stuff in? You want to know that if someone types in your book or your character, hopefully you're one of the first things that pops up. Because if they have to go through 100 things to get to you, that's tough, man. So those are other things to look into, which isn't necessarily copywriting, but it's along those lines.
All right, and that's our final question we've had, and I'm going to cut them off right now because I want a little bit of time for you guys to say goodbye. But I also want your final thoughts. We've had this hour and 20-minute conversation at this point. Is there anything you think we haven't touched upon? And I want to open it up to you guys. Do you feel like there's some big nail in the haystack that we haven't touched?
I'm good. I think we touched upon everything.
I think we played with an awful lot of stuff here.
The only thing that I could say that I don't think we had time, but I'm not sure it has to do with the actual publication, but it sort of does, is advertising it, talking about it, and building your fan base. I think that's something that should be started during this process, and an editor, an artist, and letterers, I don't think have the burden of it, nor do colorists. But everyone else in the project, you have to be talking about it. And editors are unsung heroes. I can't say that enough.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Advertising is like a show in its own. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
for sure.
Segment easily on advertising.
Cons, Facebook, Kickstarter. Yeah.
What I will say though is that, I had an editor come to me probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And they said, why are people mentioning your name over mine? Which was a very weird question to be asked. But they were like, I've been at this longer. Why do you seem to be more popular than me? And I said, well, it has nothing to do with quality. Let's be 100% honest about that. What it comes down to is I step up. Every time that I am hired for something, I treat it like I'm the writer. As far as marketing, I'll tell everyone, hey man, I worked on this book. It's really good. I'm really proud of it. And I'll throw it on my socials and I'll talk about it. And I'll tell you, doing that has gotten me so much love. And I was not listened to, and that person isn't working. And that's nothing against them. I'm not trying to knock them, but those touches matter so much. It's customer service, people. If you're working, and I don't care what part of the project you are, whether it's penciler, letter, whatever. I think of it like a rock band. A lot of times we know the singer and we know the guitarist, but why don't we know the drummer? It's because the drummer doesn't step up and talk and present themselves and show that they're worthy of that love. So why don't you step up and show? Yeah, okay, I might only be lettering, but no, man, like what I do makes made this so much better than it would have been, because I'm good at what I do and it deserves to be talked about. So just if you're a part of something, talk about it. That's all I say.
For sure. Gotta know how to promote.
All right. Yeah. So now is my favorite point in a panel, and I haven't done this week yet, and I miss it. And you both haven't been on a panel with me enough to know that I do this at the end of the panel. It's time to pitch your books off the top of your head. So we're going to randomly start with you.
All right. Yeah, I mean, when you do the con life, this comes easily. But yeah, I have a superhero book, like Father Like Daughter. It's about a high school girl. Father left her, become a full-time superhero. Everyone in the world loves him except for her, and then she inherits his abilities. We have issues 1 through 5 available. The trade is literally gonna be sent to the printer tomorrow, so hopefully get that soon and get that up on my Etsy store, which you go check out. And then my other book is They Call Her a Dancer. It's about a young woman who's a dancer/assassin. When she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her, never dealt with that trauma until now. We have issues 1 through 2 available for that one. And that is a mini series. So look forward to the other issues soon. And issue 4 is literally almost done. So excited about that. Planning on pitching that around, actually. So very excited about that. And that's it for my comics. So.
Before I get started, I ordered Like Father, Like Daughter. I'm very excited to get that trade. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Much love to you, man. I'm honestly, as I've seen it come forward, I'm like, yes, can't wait to get that one. Very excited. I did pick up. Thank you
so much.
Trade. Absolutely, hon. I'm very excited for that one. It looked like a really cool idea, and you pitched it very well. So thank you. I'm the writer and co-creator of Belial. Belial is a book about the original creator of Hell, Belial, who created all the demons in hell and all that disgusting stuff that we see, all that torture and torment. And then God sent Lucifer down, and Belial gave it up to Lucifer because that's what God wanted. And eventually, millennia later, he's decided, no, you know what? I did all this work. He let my place go to crap. Time to take it back. Belial, Lucifer, ding, ding, ding. Let's see what happens. And and I also have Welcome to the Void. Welcome to the Void is my modern day take on magic. The idea basically is if a Wiccan lights a candle or a faith healer mends someone's bones, they take that energy from somewhere else and utilize their faith to create modern day magic. But if you don't have to, if you know what the void is and how to summon that magic, you don't need to worry about faith. You can do whatever you want. Welcome to the Void.
Advocator. Advocate.
No. The Advocator is its own book. The Advocate. You want me to talk about every book I'm on?
Just the one that you're directly related to as a creator, yes.
The Advocator, Cat Dad and Supermom, Essence House, like Calamia. I could go on forever. The Advocator is you know what? It's your chance to see tons of amazing indie comics from all sorts of people from all walks of life. You get a little piece of all of these amazing ongoing series, and you get that little glimpse that hopefully will take you into whole new worlds. And then, of course, we have Cat Dad and Supermom. The imagination of a young boy creates an entire amazing world of superheroes based out of his own parents, where we learn some amazing lessons.
And it's award-winning.
It is award-winning, absolutely.
All right, guys, give a shout-out to your social media platforms so they can follow you, and then we're out of here.
Cool. Yeah, my social media @Comic pretty much everywhere. YouTube, that's my show. Twitter, it's my handle. And then Facebook, I also have a page there. And then you check out my writing at Newsrama and DC Universe. So go check all that stuff out. Also do Legends of Tomorrow podcast and a comic book podcast every Tuesday on Comic Frontline. It's called Comic Book Weekly. It's at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, where we talk all things comics. So be sure to check that out as well.
Chuck?
As I said earlier, I'm Chuck Pino, Pineau. You can track me down
on us for a minute. I'll just wait till Chuck comes back. This happens.
No, he's still here.
Oh, I can't. I guess. Okay, I'm sorry, dude. You blanked out on my screen. It's weird. There's been internet issues. They were reporting it today in certain areas where we're not communicating with each other because we've been having problems all week on the show where people can't hear each other. And it all turns out it's Netflix's 4K. It's all Netflix's fault.
Oh, Netflix. Damn you and your chill.
So I'm sorry, Chuck. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Chuck Pino, Pineau. You can track me down on Facebook. Of course, you can get me on Twitter at ChuckyPin. You can find my Chuck's Raw reviews on many websites, including YouTube. And you can also find my audio drama, metaphysical mystery, Essence House, anywhere where you can find podcasts.
All right, guys. So that's it. Thank you so much for being on the show today. An amazing panel. You guys nailed it. You brought it home. I hope that people understand how much information they just got for free. You didn't have to pay to go to a con to get this kind of information. These are truly professional people. I hope you guys learned something, and we'll see you at the next panel tomorrow and next week. All right, guys. That's it. We're out. Thanks for being part of it. And